wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy.
Welcome to a informative version of Security Guy Radio today. No jokes today, Mr. Bristow.
None?
Serious subject. I'm not even going to say your nomic or nickname. Mr. Paul Bristow, my co-host. How are you?
Good.
I just got kind of tired.
I can't tally ho. No?
Well, you could. I mean, I don't want to make light of this subject today. We're going to be talking about how not to get shot in a public active shooter situation. So I thought we'd take kind of a little more serious approach to it today. I'm sure there'll be some things to make light of. Usually public responses and governments and things like that. That's all fair game, right? But I want to make sure the victims understand that this is kind of a serious thing.
Well, we do take it serious, even if we...
well, you know, I mean, the thing that bugs me about it is this isn't really difficult or hard, and there's solutions for these things. And a lot of people, quote, experts, you know, kind of put it off and say, well, you know, that's not going to work because we do it this way. And we're just going to give you some practical things today to teach you guys how to respond to this. If you go to our Facebook page, securityguyradio.com, you'll find about 3 or 4 stories on there that I posted and some Wikipedia information about statistics because I love statistics, as you know.
Yes.
I love history. I mean, today I'm sitting here preparing for the show with my son, and he says, here's how he talks. Hey, Dad. Yeah, what's up, Max? Oh, did you hear about that thing at Valley College? I said, no. So his friend was at Valley College and text him that they were going into lockdown looking for some kind of, I don't know if it was a shooter or what it was. I haven't read too much about it yet. So here's, you know, life imitating art or art imitating life, whatever you say. As we're preparing for that show, this happens. So it touches everybody. My daughter's friend my daughter and her friend were on the way to Santa Monica College when that other shooting happened last year. So this is going to affect everybody.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about school shootings specifically because that's kind of something that is in the news a lot. But I bet you didn't know that this has not just started as a recent phenomenon, did you?
Oh, I did not.
You're
going to surprise me.
I may surprise you with some information here. If you go to our Facebook page, you'll find a Wikipedia link. And if I can get my my not-so-smart phone here to work for you, I'll tell you some things. So there's a very interesting link there about the history of shootings, and they go back as early as 1764.
Probably further, actually. If you
possibly, yeah. But it's just kind of really interesting how some of these things happen. September 28th, 1850, Westchester, Pennsylvania, Rocky Hill Schoolhouse. Students found their young teacher shot. And some guy behind a tree and using a copy of the Saturday Evening Post to shoot her. He's pissed off at her, right? Some of these early shootings, November 1853, Louisville, Kentucky, a student named Matthew Ward bought a pistol in the morning. No gun control and gun control, right? So here we go. There's probably no permits back then in 1853. He buys the gun in the morning, goes to the school and kills the schoolmaster as revenge for what the student thought was excessive punishment.
Where did he get the money from, though? Because it must have been expensive to buy a pistol.
I don't know. Well, I think they were considered more tools back then. Maybe it wasn't.
Yeah.
So he was upset because the schoolmaster had disciplined his brother, okay? August 16th, 1856, Florence, Alabama. The schoolmaster had this little bird, and he's really fond of the bird. And he told all the students, you better not let anything happen to that bird. What do you call those in England? Bungees?
Budgies.
Budgies, a budgie. And some kid accidentally, I don't know, tripped over the bird, killed the bird. The schoolmaster gets ticked off and strangles the kid.
Oh, no, I hadn't seen that one.
Then his dad comes back, the kid's dad, and the dad shoots the schoolmaster dead. All right. Baltimore, Maryland, 1858, a 15-year-old son of a colonel of the police department was shot dead at a Sabbath school gathering. Several arrests were made. 1859, Oakland. A guy accidentally shot himself while hunting on campus. He was one of the few students permitted to have a firearm. So apparently you could have a firearm.
He shot himself?
Actually shot himself. Okay. So it's classified as a shooting, but not actually a violent attack or anything like that. All kinds of things like this. I mean, there's things called the Baltimore, Maryland. There were shootings in churches, 1864, Ashley County, Ohio. A lot of students shooting schoolmasters and teachers back in the day for some reason. Guy, Knights Ferry, California, was shot and killed by his daughter's teacher after the student threatened the teacher for expelling the daughter from school. So this has been going on a long time.
Yeah.
Now, interesting how this is all directed between parents and teachers and kids as much. Not the other part of it. But
is that because schools, etc., were an area where you had a lot of people together? Where you didn't really have malls, did you? You didn't have a shopping mall.
No shopping malls. I mean, probably the schools or churches back then were places. But no, but
social places.
See, I think people miss the mark on that. I don't think people go to large areas where people are as much as they have a familiarity with whatever the places they're shooting, okay? So here's my take on it. And I could be wrong, and I probably am because nobody pays me anymore. But let's just say I might be right. I think this all comes down to people feeling a sense of being disrespected, right? And you know this as a copper, right?
Yeah.
You want to get a guy in the police car that just murdered his wife, you don't drag him, berate him.
Yeah.
You act like a gentleman and you get people to do what you want. So in all these school shootings, I think people's emotion that's provoked is not rage and anger and stuff. I think these people get bullied, they get hurt, and they feel that they're going to get a sense of not fame, but I think a sense of justice and fairness, right? A 3-year-old, what does a 3-year-old say? That's not fair.
Yeah.
That's not fair. How does a 3-year-old know that concept, right?
Yeah.
So I think people that take out these rages on people, I think they just feel they've been jaded and it's not fair. Now, the other thing I'm not happy with is people calling them crazy. Do you think they're crazy?
Well, there's definitely something wrong.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Here's why I think. Because to be crazy would mean...
I'm not saying they're crazy. I'm saying there's something...
Well, they're antisocial.
Wrong.
But when we classify them as crazy and look for a reason for it and try to justify it, there is no justification. I don't care why you did it. You did it. It's against the law.
Yeah.
You weren't so crazy that you couldn't plan it.
Yeah.
And by the way, these are complex things to plan.
Yeah.
You just don't pick up a gun and start using it. You have to know something about it. So you're not really crazy in that sense.
Yeah.
You have some cognitive awareness. You're just antisocial and you think that that's the right thing to do. And, in all those school shootings, what's the common thing we always study? Violent video games. No idea. Oh, please. It's Mr. Brian, do you play violent video games? You look like a chap that would, as a matter of fact.
I look like what?
A chap that would play violent video games.
No, I don't have time for video games.
Oh, okay.
I listen to a lot of violent music.
But see, it's interesting with the video games because that hasn't really hit home. I mean, you don't hear too many. You hear them talking about it. You hear people talking about it. But when you look at almost every single case, they're playing these games.
They're playing those games,
and yet, the entertainment industry has said, oh, absolutely not. It's nothing to do with it.
I mean,
and they seem to have enough strength to stop the blame landing on those video games, which is interesting.
Well, it's a cause and effect issue, causation. I'm not so sure that the games make you violent. In fact, I think it's a release for a lot of people, right? I think what it does, though, is desensitizes you. Makes you think that violence isn't real, right?
But I've got a question for you, and this has always been an issue for me, is why do most of these mass shootings in schools, right, and in actual fact outside schools, happen mainly in what I would call white, middle-class suburbia? You don't see too much of this stuff going on in the inner city. Right?
we looked at that. I think the statistics support that. I'm a little rusty on that.
Absolutely. No, I think.
I think you're right about it.
You don't even have to have statistics. You do not see this sort of stuff going on in the inner city.
Be
now,
careful.
They've got other problems.
Be careful saying that, though, right? Because if you look at your Wikipedia, what is the site you found? I started counting and I lost track at about 200 shootings.
The problem is that there's so many of them. I mean, I think we need to spend a show just going through
case history stuff.
Case history stuff because it's just so much.
There's hundreds of them.
I mean, the latest one in Seattle. That there's any real good information on. June the 5th. And then there's just pages of it.
Well, we got the officer shot in Vegas a couple days ago.
Yep.
I mean, that's not school, but it's work.
It's a little bit different because that
public.
was, sort of, same sort of thing, I guess. But it was a couple of people that just went out specifically to kill coppers. I think most of the stuff is a little bit different. The Vista, one in California, obviously, and then Fort Hood. The second one at Fort Hood. People forget there's been two
Fort Hoods.
shootings
That's right.
at Fort Hood, right?
Yep.
But you could just go on forever, and that's the problem with
So
it.
check out our Facebook page, Security Guy Radio, because you'll find a lot of links to articles and facts. And we've just dispelled one of the facts, all right? That America's fraught with school shootings, and America's, you know what? This has been going on for a long time.
And it's all over the world, by the way.
It's all over the world. And last time I took a class, I think the professor told us that probably every day there's a school incident around the world.
Yep.
Different severities, right? But the news only wants to report high body counts, so you don't hear about one kid stabbed at Reseda High School in 1999, which I read about. And, I lived out in the valley and thought, well, I don't remember hearing that. Right? But there's stabbing, shootings, that kind of thing. So it's really, it is a problem. Now, what the government will tell you is that the homicide rate in the United States is down. That's great, isn't it, right? That's great news.
Yes.
Since we were coppers and stuff.
Apparently.
Why is it down? Because we're all such good citizens?
Well, we are.
Well,
Yeah.
it's because the medical technology is up.
That's right.
So when you get shot by a Mac 10 and somebody busts a cap in your ass, you are going to survive better because of the medical technology. So if you take that number of homicides that are down and think that's great, but you correlate it between actual violence and a rise in violence, it's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exponential, right? So I think these are things you need to look at the facts on. And we want to talk about facts today as far as what people's perceptions are of shootings and perpetrators. But towards the end of the show, we're going to give you some real practical tips on how not to get shot.
Other than just run.
Other than just run, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things involved in that. There's a lot of government sources that say run, hide, fight, and all that kind of stuff.
Actually, I think the government video that they sent out, I think it is called Run, Hide, Fight.
Or something, yeah.
Excellent video.
Simplest.
Excellent video.
Simplest
Simple,
version.
It's a few minutes long, and it's well worth checking out on the government website.
So what's some
In
other
fact, we should put a link on it.
Yeah, we do. We
on
should.
the website.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
What are some of the common traits we hear about in shooters? We have the violent video games. We have people that tend to be above average intelligence. Tend to be loners,
I think it's interesting that we've got away from the old generic profile of the white guy, 35 years old, who wore camouflage, uniform and went out shooting every weekend. I mean, that's gone.
Right.
That profile was gone. I mean, we're really now looking at behaviour. As we spoke about in previous shows. I mean, we really are looking at the behaviour of people instead of just the profile. Now, the problem, I think, is that we're not really checking on that behaviour. I mean, these people do this because they haven't been observed.
Well, no, I disagree with you.
Or they've been observed, but nobody realises what
nobody recognizes what the behavior is and what they're doing. So
exactly.
Another common trait, and my kids know this and their friends know this because they've come across this in their different schools they've been to, and I've discussed this with them. Hard to say every, but most of these profiles, right? These people have foreshadowed what's going to happen. And they've given a piece of what they're going to do to somebody. Either writing a manifesto and telling their psychiatrist about it, and the psychiatrist, at least in California, under the Terrorism ruling, has a link.
Or they put it on the website.
Well, they put it on a website, right? Or they just tell people, I'm going to go shoot, I'm going to go kill these people.
Yeah.
Oh, really? And they let people know what they're going to do. And why? Because it empowers them. It makes them feel like I'm going to show you what's going on. But what happens is people don't say anything about it. In the Virginia Tech shooting, the perpetrator bought his gun, went down to a shooting range to practice. And we'll talk about why they hit you and all that kind of stuff later. But he went to the shooting range to practice, and he took the silhouette targets that we hang up, and put down 20 yards. He put them on the ground. And he walked by going pop, pop, pop on the ground, and nobody at the firing range thought,
that's weird.
Homer, that's kind of strange. We would have called somebody about that. They didn't do anything about it, right? And had they called somebody, they would have said, wait a minute, what's this guy doing, right?
Yeah.
I think that guy also made some statements to his psychologist or psychiatrist.
He made several videos.
Yeah, Klebold and Harris and Columbine. There's always a tip somewhere, right? And the problem is people look at it and say, well, he wouldn't possibly do that. He'd have to be crazy, and I don't think he's crazy because the guy sits in class next to me.
Or he's a little bit strange.
Strange.
That's just Joe Blow.
The Asperger's kid up in Santa Barbara. I just heard little bits about the news. You don't know what's all true.
Yeah.
But the parents saying, well, we notified the school and we told them about it, and we wrote some letters. And I got an idea. why don't you get your ass in the car and drive an hour and a half from Los Angeles to Santa Barbara, take your kid out of school, give
Yeah.
him a hug, and say, hey,
Yep.
what's going on? Don't give him his brand new BMW.
Yeah.
And I'm not picking on rich people, by the way. Don't give him his brand new car and just say, hope you're okay, Tommy.
Yeah.
You know, there were signs with this kid, too.
Yeah.
So we want everybody to be aware that that's what's going on today. We're going to teach you guys some things that are warning signs, things you need to do. And then we're going to have Dr. Steve Albrecht's going to come on.
In fact, he's calling in pretty soon.
Yeah, he should be calling in pretty soon. We'll have him come in and
right
jump in with his opinion on that. So back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And check out our Facebook page for links to some of these interesting articles. Back in a minute. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Welcome back, Mr. Paul Bristow.
Hello.
So let's talk about a couple of specific cases that I studied. I went to that active shooter training
Yeah.
provided by Response Options. It's great.
Was it good?
It's very, very good. And they get into histories and things like that. It's really, really kind of interesting. So you learn a little inside baseball on this stuff, right? So the basic response that you're taught and I'm taught is to lock down your facility, get under your desk, and hide.
Yeah.
And you and I were taught that in school because that was the nuclear drill.
Yep.
In case nuclear war
It was.
in case the Russians were going to kill us,
Yeah.
that table's going to protect us.
Unfortunately.
And that continues.
Yeah.
And our muscle memory is that if that happened, if we weren't cops, we'd be jumping under tables and
Yeah,
things like
yeah.
that. Okay. So I'm going to go to Virginia Tech first. I'm going to go backwards to Columbine to show you something interesting. Virginia Tech was basically a guy. Suspects aren't important, but his actions are more important. He goes into the school, shoots his psychiatrist, professor, whatever he is. About 20 minutes later, he winds up in one of the buildings.
Yeah.
Okay, and picture this: picture a hallway with like four rooms on left and 4 rooms on the right, and he goes down the hallway systematically into each room. Goes pop, 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 and when he gets to the very last room, it's a professor that was a Holocaust victim. And this guy knew how to recognize danger. He knew what a gunshot was. He knew what screams were. He got it, right? He barricaded the door with his body, and his kids jumped out the second-story window, and nobody in his room was shot. And the suspect tried to get in the door, and he couldn't, and he shot through the door. He gave up. He went back to the other classrooms, and he went back and finished off the people that he hadn't gotten in the first time around. And when he got to one of the classrooms, these 2 kids who had already been shot and wounded decided, it's not my day to die. And they got up, and they barricaded the door, and they barricaded themselves against the door. And he shot through the door, and I think he wounded another one. And they lived. So the barricade lockdown alone didn't work because these are classrooms where you can, shoot through a window, shoot the door.
Which is in the case of a lot of classrooms.
Right. But these kids did something beyond just sitting there waiting to get shot like a fish in the barrel, right? They actually took some action themselves and did something about it. If you go backward, now there were 17 people wounded in that and 30 people killed, right? And if you go backwards to Columbine in 99, there were about 12 people wounded and 10 people killed.
But what was the interesting, just to go back, what was the interesting thing about Charles, the weapons that he used?
What?
And the fact that they were all handguns.
Oh, yeah, handguns. Yeah, it's not rifles.
Yeah.
I mean,
rifles, no long guns, no shotguns. I think he did have one shotgun, but it was all handguns. Which is interesting, right?
Yeah, it can be. It's not capacity. It's not all that stuff, right? If you know what you're doing, you can reload a gun in 2 seconds,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So if we go backwards to Columbine, the tragedy in that was that the teacher, the librarian, who was really kind of a hero in one way, she did what she was taught. Let's get the kids. Let's barricade in the library. She's on the phone for about 40 minutes with the police department saying, hey, Cleveland and Harris are outside. They're doing this. Or heard a gunshot go off. And you can hear this tape that we use in the class of the shooting, right? And you also hear her say, get down, get under the table, come back here, whatever. She's telling children in the library who are trying to run out the back door, which was, 15 feet away and a free escape, and they're clear. She's telling them to get back under the table. Well, what happens is they come in the library and shoot every one of them under the table. Tragic. Did she do something wrong? She did what she was trained to do.
Exactly, yeah.
And you're going to respond to what you're trained to do. And that's kind of the sad part of it. So we're going to give you some things to do today that are going to help you hopefully not do that. You might not do them unless you actually practice them, but it'll be a start. You asked about how many totals. I got a stat here. School-associated violent deaths, 1992 to 210. 468.
Was that good?
Yeah, higher than I thought. Shootings, about 300.
Is that just schools?
That's just schools,
Okay.
right? So you put the other number in there.
Yeah.
348 shootings in that number, 468 dead since '92. That's a lot of shootings.
There's a lot of shootings.
And if you look at the other numbers, it's really that almost every day something happens.
Now the question is, though, how does that compare with stuff like drink drive?
Another show.
It's another show.
Another show.
But it's just interesting to compare. There's 30 odd, 28 people killed each day
Right.
from drink drive in America.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting comparison.
Yeah.
You know.
I think the problem with this is people feel completely powerless in shootings.
Yeah.
Drunk driving, you're in the car, it's a bad luck, you get a bad turn, you have some
Yeah.
kind of say in it, but with the shooting, you don't.
Yeah.
Mr. Brian, do we have our special guest on the phone? Is that Dr. Steve? All right, let me grab him. What line? Line 1? Dr. Steve, you there?
Chuck, how are you?
Good, my friend.
How
Thanks
are
for
you,
calling
Steve?
in. Thanks for calling in.
Hi,
Dr.
Paul.
Steve Albrecht.
Where are you, in San Diego still?
I'm in Houston. But
Oh, Houston. Okay.
Yeah. Did you hear a little bit about the show, what we were talking about?
I did a little bit of it, a little bit.
Yeah, we kind of went over some statistics. I mean, this isn't a stat show. We want to do one on the stats because that's
Yeah.
kind of good. We're kind of give people some practical, things they can do. We were just talking about the lockdown, which is the first thing you're taught to do is get under the table and hide, and then you become a fish in the barrel and a target. And, what say you about that?
Well, I think the first move is evacuation. If you follow the run, hide, fight, national protocol,
Right.
I like the idea of getting out of the building and leaving the bad guy in the building, and so that the cops know who's who to engage with. So I think evacuation is the first one, and then lockdown would be the second.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Place.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that that's got through now? Do you think people are following that?
I do. I think it's easier to remember than some of the other acronyms that you may have heard about. I think the video that was done by Homeland Security is easy to watch and download,
Yeah.
and it takes 6 minutes. It's kind of like an earthquake drill for California people. You just file it away and hope you never need it.
Yeah, if you're an administrator in a facility, a school, that sort of thing, there are other training methods that you need to have to administer that sort of thing, right? You need a notification system, you need information, but that's we're not talking about those people today. We're talking about my son and daughter who are going to get their ass out of their school when something happens and how they're going to do it.
Or anywhere else to be done.
Oh, yeah, we're saying school, but you're right.
Yeah.
Anywhere else,
Yeah.
any other public place.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing is we're not having the kids, especially at the elementary school or junior high level. They're not doing the fight back part. But we certainly want the adults to engage. In a life-threatening situation, if there's 20 people in the room and they can overpower the guy, I think that's not a bad strategy. We're not teaching that to the kids, but we sure are for the adults.
That Sandy Hook, I heard something in class, interesting stat. And I taught this to my kids. I always taught my kids, and I apologize to their wonderful teachers. Don't listen to anything the teachers tell you during an emergency, all right? I mean, one thing they used to have my kids do was take their shoes off during a nap. And I walked in and said, so if there's an earthquake, we're going to run across broken glass?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
never thought about that.
Yeah.
And they changed it, right? So Sandy Hook, the teacher did what she's supposed to do, get all the kids in a corner, barricade the door, lock the door, and then the guy comes in and shoots everybody in the corner.
Yeah.
One kid was in the office, and when he came back to the class, a shooting was engaged, and he ran underneath the shooter's arm, basically. And we'll talk about target acquisition and how he was able to accomplish that in a minute. And I think he grabbed one or two of his kids and saved them, and he went out. Because his mom had said, same thing. No, you're not going to do that. I'm going to train you to do this other thing, which is run. And I agree with you, Steve. A little kid's not going to swarm a guy. Although, you know what? If you had 40 10-year-olds swarm you, your ass is grass. I mean, that's...
Well, I thought it was interesting, the shooting in Vegas. What was that, yesterday?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, the chap in the Walmart store that unfortunately got shot by the female. But I actually think that the fact that he began to actually, fight with obviously with a firearm, I truly believe that stopped that going any further.
No, absolutely.
I mean, I think that just,
Right.
took them off of their game plan, and they realised that, there may be more firearms or whatever in the store, and they just took them off their game plan. What do you think, Steve?
Well, I also heard that the male shooter had said something about, get out of here, and he sort of asked some people to leave. I don't know how much of that is true. You guys know from your experience, these guys engage in targeted violence. I think the actual targets were the cops and the responding cops. So that's a concern there. And I think we're still stuck in the idea that a lot of these things seem random. And you guys know from your experience these things are planned out in some form. they have a list of targets in their head, whether it's the cops or the teacher specifically or a coworker or a boss. This idea of just coming in and shooting everybody is not what we've seen.
Well, what do you think about something that I was talking about earlier on with the difference between inner city violence and the type of thing that you see in the suburbs, as it were? That you don't really see this sort of stuff down in the inner city.
Yeah, the stuff in the inner city seems like payback, gang related. Guys messing with each other in the streets, and then the wrong people get caught in the crossfire. Whereas the targeted violence seems to be aimed at an organization, whether it's a government business or a church or a mall or a school. Obviously they're picking soft targets. I'm sure they weren't expecting to be engaged with by anybody inside the Walmart.
But why don't you see that targeted violence?
Or do you? Is it misclassified? Oh, that's just gang related.
Oh, it could be.
That's not a
Could
school
be.
shooting. That's
Could
just
be.
some gangs killing each other.
Yeah.
It's still school violence.
Yeah.
I think it may be.
Yeah, I think the FBI captures it that way too. If it happens on or near the school property, they consider it to be school violence. But I'm interested in the stuff that's sort of the growing trend, that we're seeing, as opposed to the things that have been going on for a long time between these gangsters. So
let's talk about the run concept. Why are you going to get away with the run, and why is your chance of surviving exponentially going to go up? So
my thought is that these guys can't shoot that accurately under stress. They're not oftentimes trained. If you can run in a sort of zigzag, get away as fast as you can pattern, you got a pretty good chance of getting away. I heard you guys talking about Columbine. My thing is, I want a fewest number of civilian employees or kids or teachers in the way so the cops can come inside and engage with these guys.
Now, I believe at Columbine, didn't they go around and actually lock some of the exit doors in Columbine?
Yeah,
if I remember rightly.
The bigger problem was that all the moms and dads showed up and it blocked all the emergency responders. It was just a mess, a lot of stuff. Here's, I've been shot at on 3 different occasions, 3 different times.
Twice for me.
Twice, all right. So, and I'm alive. Why am I alive? 1983, I'm on a roof in San Gabriel, and there's supposed to be a burglar up there, and the janitor had called us and said, hey, somebody's breaking into the roof. And my friend Carlos and I are walking across the roof, and I hear this cracking sound, and I look down, and there's rounds coming up right between my legs, and I start jumping back and running, and I jump on an air conditioning, and this guy empties his gun into the air conditioning instead of me. It was the janitor. He thought he was helping us out by shooting the burglar.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You sure it wasn't Satan?
I don't know. Like my kids almost didn't get born that day. That was a close call. Now, what's interesting physics-wise, and tell me if this is your experience, Paul, is that things don't go into slow motion, really. What happens is your brain speeds up and focuses, highly focused, and you see things more clearly, and it looks like it's slow motion, right? And I could actually see, not the bullets like in a cartoon, okay? But you could see traces of it. You could see movement. You could see particles coming off the roof. That allowed you to think and have presence of mind to get out of the way, right? Another time I'm at a guy's party, and somebody followed me home from the police department. It's in what we used to call Cirrhosis by the Sea, my friend's pad over there. In Santa Monica. And I'm standing on his front lawn next to his brand new 240ZX or whatever it was. His truck comes by 2 or 3 times, and the third time I said, oh, that's not good. Some guy pops up out of the back with a 45, pop, 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 empties a 45 at me. I jump behind a tree, the tree gets full of holes, and my friend's car got full of holes, unfortunately. Again, I could see the guy, at target acquisition, I could see what he was doing. He was going to shoot at me, and I responded to it. And the third time I was on duty in Culver City, and my friend calls for backup code 3, and he says, don't go down Mesmer, that's a kill zone. I look up, and there I was on Mesmer Avenue, and the car gets shot at. In that case, you could hear the rounds going past you. Right?
Yeah.
But again, with all that stuff, since you've been shot at, you can actually survive it, right? And you got a couple stories. You've been shot at, too. Oh, Brian, do we need a break? No, you don't need a break? Brian, can I hear you talking through the glass without the microphone?
I'm sorry, do you want to go on
No,
break?
I thought you were queuing me for break. I beg your pardon.
We're like up 2 minutes over break if you want to keep going.
No, we'll go a few more minutes.
Yeah.
All right, so tell me about yours. You got shot at, too.
The worst one was obviously at the Iranian siege.
Oh, yeah.
There's actually a video of it, and I was running down the side of a wall, and you can actually see the automatic fire bouncing off of the wall above our
And you were
heads.
running, and you didn't get hit.
I was running really fast.
Right.
Yeah. But, I just,
So here's why.
I just remember being scared.
When you look at the statistics, cops and shootouts only hit their target about 15% of the time.
Yeah.
Because it's panic, like Steve said. You're engaged, and this is in close proximity, like a 10-foot shooting, right?
Yeah.
But bad guys in these shootings, hit their targets about 50% of the time, and they have a high kill ratio. And why is that? Because nobody's moving.
That's right. They're
People
all
are
still.
staying under a table or barricading themselves, and they're getting shot. So this is what we want to focus on, people, today, this run component. We're going to talk about the hide and the fight, which are actually two other good responses. But, Steve, think about that, and I want to hear your thoughts when you get back, because you're a police officer yourself, and you know what I'm talking about. When people get shooting at you, you get moving. We'll be back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Back in a minute. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com with my co-host, Paul Bristow. I am... Who am I? You're supposed to come back and say
No
Chuck
idea.
Carroll. Oh, my God. Do you do anything except look at that computer all day?
Yeah.
Welcome back with our very special call-in guest from Houston, Dr. Steve Albrecht. Steve, you there?
I am.
I'm glad that
Did Paul say tally ho this morning? When he
I did. I thought he was expecting a tally ho. There.
Well, no, we didn't, because we're trying to make it a little more serious subject. We did not do that.
think-
And I didn't even have a nickname today either, did I?
No.
I was going to say...
Well, that's what I was waiting. I was
Well,
trying to come up with.
I was going to say a show of high caliber, but I thought that wasn't probably appropriate.
Yeah.
High capacity show. I don't want to say
Yeah.
that. All right, so we're back to, let's talk about the run thing. Steve, give me your thoughts on the run component, being an ex-cop and being engaged in training and things like that. I mean, when they put you on the range and do a live fire exercise, you know how to get out of the way, because we can recognize it. And the trick is for people, in civilians, so to speak, to understand what danger is and to know how to respond to it and get out of the way.
I think what you said before the break, Chuck, was correct, which is a lot of these people, cower together, and part of the component of the hide part is to spread out. And then, they're in, it's not fight or flight mode, they're in freeze mode, which is the worst
Yeah.
one can be. And they don't get out of harm's way fast enough. I think children may be even a little bit better than adults, because adults are in denial about what is happening,
Good
whereas
point.
kids might say, that sounds like a mess, I need to get out of here. But,
Right.
a rapid movement away from the situation. And then, I don't know if you guys have got into the concept of cover versus concealment, but, certainly that would be useful in these situations. You're hiding behind something that blocks the view of the shooter, but also stops bullets.
Well, that's important, because they're looking for target acquisition. They're trying to find somebody that they can engage. And if anything distracts them, they're off their mark. And if you are hiding, and by the way, if that's all you can do, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
You don't stand out in the open. If you have to duck behind a file cabinet and hope he doesn't find you, that's your only option. But you have to act. You can't just stand there.
Well, the other thing with schools, I haven't really seen a great change in the way that schools are designed. I mean, you've still got classrooms with only one way in and one way out.
Well, it's
which
interesting.
is
Yeah,
a concern.
that's interesting, because in your run scenario, where are you going to run to if you're just going down a corridor that funnels you right
Yeah.
to the guy that's shooting?
Yeah.
So there's some design ideas. If you look at the Virginia Tech, one recommendation out of it, if you have this hallway with 4 classes on the left and 4 on the right, they're all separate blocks, right? One idea was to create entrances from the outside and then entrances through the classrooms in the middle.
Yeah.
So you could go from classroom to classroom.
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
migrate
yeah.
away from the danger in one classroom, lock it off, go to the next
But are
empty
you
classroom.
actually seeing that? I mean, I've looked at a
No.
lot of schools, in
Interestingly,
what we do, and
though-
I haven't seen too many like that.
Yeah, but Notre Dame, remember Notre Dame High School?
Yeah.
They had a very old part of their school there. It was built in the 40s.
Yeah.
That's how all the classrooms were
Yeah,
designed.
yeah.
The doors were in between each classroom in the middle,
Yeah.
not out in the hallway necessarily.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of places to
Yeah.
enter and exit. So those are important factors.
Have you seen a lot of design changes, Steve? I mean, have you seen the people grabbing onto that? Because I haven't.
Well, the part that I'm slowly but surely seeing is now the ability for the teachers to lock the classroom from inside easily, either electronically or in a much more, useful piece of hardware than just a key, and also telephones in more classrooms now. But you're right, guys. I don't see a lot of design changes because they're, these schools are ancient, some of them. The other part I think is a concern is that, we teach people to evacuate in sort of an orderly manner, and so they would probably not think about climbing out a window even on the ground floor, whereas I would, if I thought I couldn't get out of the door because it was blocked, but I could climb out a window and run the opposite direction, I would do that. But I don't see much movement towards teaching kids or adults, how to get out of a facility any way, shape, or form.
Well, I've actually been to schools where the plan for an active shooter is the same as an earthquake,
or fire, right?
and all run into one area,
Right.
which I found
no.
pretty interesting.
So here's what I would recommend
know?
to people, and my insurance is current. It's only advice, a recommendation. Do what you got to do. You have to become your own independent security agent. You have to be responsible for your own safety. In other words, 500 kids at a school running 500 different directions is a hard thing for a shooter to figure out what to do with, right? But if we're all marching out the classroom in a fire drill,
there's some crazy stuff.
Let's all go in the library at Columbine and barricade, and that's where we found it, right?
Yeah.
So the statistics, we practice so much for fire drills, and I think the last thing I read was there have been no deaths by fires in schools in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
But we're still
Probably
doing
right.
fire drills once a month. Can you get them to do a active shooter drill? No, you can't get them to do it. Why? Money?
Because I think it's disruptive to the business. I mean, that's
right.
the part I hear from the senior executives. This will disrupt the business. I mean, I said, if you're doing it correctly, it should only take a half hour.
That's right.
Somebody leaves the facility, or they go to a place and lock the door, and then they return to their
Well,
desk.
well,
They think it's just too disruptive.
Is it also because people don't want to admit that there's a possibility of an active shooter?
I think it's going to
Where
scare
the
employees.
possibility of a fire. Okay, everybody recognizes a fire.
Right.
You
A
know,
fire's not a
you know.
person.
Yeah.
Fire's a thing.
Yeah, or an earthquake.
But for me to admit as the head of the company that I have poor security and a shooter could get in here and it could happen, and, they don't know what they're talking about, but they don't want to. I've heard from executives that they're afraid that employees are going to feel it's not a safe environment if we give that training.
Yeah.
When, in fact, the opposite is true.
Yeah.
It's twice a safe environment. So movement and target acquisition go hand in hand, and it's very hard to hit. Go back to your basics. Everything I learned in grade school, right? Remember dodgeball? Before it was politically incorrect to play dodgeball? You had to try and hit that guy against the board with the big rubber ball, and, it wasn't that easy to do. It's not easy to do. So these are some things in the run scenario that's important. And, again, you're going to run, if you have the right opportunity, if it's safe, right? And now let's move to hide, all right? So I'm running, and I have to change my path because now it's unsafe, and I have to duck or I have to cover something like that. So, Steve, I like what you said there a minute ago about concealment versus barricading. They can be two different things or one and the same.
Well, the cover part certainly is out of the sight of the shooter, but the concealment part, staying clear of that guy. But covers stops bullets, and in a perfect world we'd have cover and concealment. So that's why I like steel doors on fire escapes and concrete stairways and things like that, and behind a huge copy machine in the file room. That's some of the things we've seen, like in the Run, Hide, Fight video. How much wherewithal people have about that at the moment of truth is hard to say, but that's certainly the thing we would aim them for, which is cover and concealment.
I'll tell you one thing that's prevalent in schools are books. Well, not so much anymore, maybe, but textbooks, right? So back in the day when we didn't have Kevlar, I remember at one of the PDs I was at, they took big phone books and they put those in the desk, the window below. So somebody tried to shoot through that, right?
Well, what you're seeing now is backpacks with Kevlar.
Kevlar backpacks,
They're very interesting.
So I always taught my
kids. Did you guys see the Kevlar blankets today? It was on the Twitter I saw.
No.
Kevlar blankets had about six or eight kids hiding under these Kevlar blankets.
Well,
I mean, depressing actually.
It is a little depressing, but I mean, if that's all you got and you can use it, I always taught my kids, grab a couple of your textbooks and put one on your head, one in your chest, and run if you can. Do that. The other thing I taught them was on the concealment part that movement can cause attention. So to your point, Steve, if you're moving and you have to stop, then if you're going to stop, you better go down and be concealed. Because if you just stop and freeze, now you're a target because you're not moving. So stopping during your run phase is gonna allow people to gain a target acquisition on you.
And I like your idea of a million kids running in a million directions. I mean, it's hard for these guys to aim that correctly. And I still go back to the cases we have seen where the kid wants to really shoot the football coach, or he really wants to shoot the principal or the girl that broke his heart, and who he kills to get to that person is significant, but he ultimately is aiming oftentimes at a specific target. And if we can get everybody out of the way and get those targets out of the way, that's the best we can do.
Well, I think it gets back to the jungle, actually, doesn't it? I mean, if you look at it as a lion, say, chasing its prey, the gazelle are all over the place, right?
Yeah,
it's very hard to focus in on one target at that point.
Well, when we get to the fight part, we're going to see that they're not lions actually, they're pansies.
Yeah,
actually, it's kind of interesting. So during the hide phase, some things you can think about during that is being familiar with your environment. And here's the advantage you have in a school or workplace: you live there, right? Yeah. All the kids know their schools. They know where to go hide and smoke behind the gym. They know all the places.
Yeah.
The shooter may be part of that environment, may not be part of that environment. But in that situation when the shooter's actively moving through the school and acquiring targets, he's not thinking about the hiding places. He's thinking of moving objects.
Well, he's moving.
He's moving.
Yeah.
So if you can keep your presence of mind and say, you know what, I used to go hide and smoke behind the gym. That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
And you know where your hiding places are on your barricade things. So, put some distance between them in the run. If you have to hide, you're going to go down behind file cabinets that are metal, right? Doors. Now, let's talk about hiding as a component of barricade, not lockdown, because I'm not a great proponent of lockdown, right? So if you're running and hiding and you dunk in a classroom, Paul, what are you going to do? You're not going to just close the door and hope it doesn't open, right?
Well, but
no, but what are we going to tell them to do?
We're going to barricade it.
We're going to barricade,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So be creative. Now, here's something we found in a couple of cases of shootings when they debrief people that survived, right? There's a window right there. Why didn't you break the window and jump out? Well, I'll get in trouble. I'll get in trouble for breaking the window because they weren't trained and told by the people in the environment it's okay to break the window. It's okay to grab something and break it. So these are things that you have to get out of your
a lot of those
muscle.
windows you can't break.
Some, right?
Because of burglars and stuff.
Yeah, some of them. But I mean, in some of these cases where they were just kind of an older building, it was something they could do. So think about those things as if you're in this environment, as you're moving. Steve, can you think of anything else in the hide scenario besides what I've talked about?
Well, one thing I see the SWAT officers carry is door wedges, and I see those a lot in classrooms as well, even in the
that's a good point.
The business. The door wedge can be used to wedge the door open or wedge the door shut, and I mean that it takes a fair amount of movement that even if you can't shut lock the door to use a wedge to barricade it, that might be one possibility. But you guys had said it. What can we get these kids to shove in front of the door as quickly as possible? Desks and chairs and whatnot, and then just stay out of the line of sight. The big issue, too, is you look at the amount of time on these cases, these perpetrators, Columbine is quite rare, and in terms of the length, I mean, these cases are often over in less than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
The police sirens are ringing in the suspect's ear, and if we can get these kids, out of harm's way for, 10 to 15 minutes, they may save their lives.
That's a long time, 10 minutes, by the way. And every 2 minutes that go by in a shooting, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it 2 to 4 people get shot for every 2 minutes? Something like that?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I heard 1 second of time with a chainsaw on your skin is 100 stitches. So I'll take what you said about the shootings. That sounds good.
Well, that's an interesting.
Right.
Where the hell did you read that?
We're going to be back with some statistics on the fight portion of this. And you're going to find this very interesting. This part really almost, even though it's a last resort, could really save the most lives here. It's very interesting. Back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Visit us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Oh, welcome back, Dr. Steve, Mr. Bristow.
Tally-ho.
Tally-ho.
There you go.
All right.
I knew it was in there.
All right, so let's talk about the fight part. Now, here's some interesting, I can't say interesting, interesting statistics about the fight part of this. So you may be thinking to yourself, that guy's got a gun. I can't compete with that. I'm scared of that. Paul, Steve, we're trained. We run to those things. We think that stuff's kind of fun in a way, right? Am I wrong?
Well, now I run away.
Oh,
As a young man, I used to run towards it.
Well, I'm still young enough to run a little bit.
I'm running away.
Let's say I skip, possibly, all right? I wouldn't just sit around in a restaurant and somebody started capping around, so I'd get up and do something about it, right?
I'd be out the back door.
I wouldn't, because I could do something differently if I could help
Well, I'm
people.
not armed. You are.
Well, even if I wasn't armed, I'd pick up a big sugar container and hit him in the head with it.
You don't know until it happens, do you?
I think I do. I practice. I do. I practice in my mind all the time about it because it's going to happen. I'm just one of those magnets that things happen to. So let's talk about fighting. So one thing I read about the Colorado movie theater thing, was that the guy didn't pick the theater by himself, by his house, because there was a security guard there.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
And then I think how did his stop? Somebody said, guard came up to him and he said, okay, I surrender.
Boy, I can't remember. Can you, Steve?
How did the
cops? The cops got him as he came out the back door, and they engaged with him there, and he gave up.
Yeah, very interesting.
That's right.
So in almost all the cases,
he was one of the very few that actually gave up.
No, that's
right,
not
without shooting it out with them.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily engaging the cops, and more times they commit suicide.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's interesting.
Yeah.
So in about 40% of the time, they'll kill themselves rather than getting caught. Right?
Yeah.
On the other side of it, if you apply force of some kind against the shooter, and by the way, this force is only applied about 14% of the time by the cops. All right, 46% of the time it's applied by the citizen.
Yeah.
And 40% in the case of a suicide is applied by the perpetrator,
Yeah.
right? So what do those numbers tell us? Cops aren't going to do anything about it. Statistically, 14% chance of the cops stopping the guy. There's a better chance that he's going to shoot himself, but the best chance is that the victims are going to do something. So what can you do if somebody's shooting rounds off?
Guys, did you talk about the Pacific Seattle case, Pacific University in Seattle? Did you talk about that case?
Not too much. Go ahead and jump into it.
Go.
Well, what I read is the perpetrator had shot several individuals on campus, and he was stopped by a campus security officer who pepper sprayed him. I mean, I'm a big fan of pepper spray. I think it works on bears, it works on dogs,
Yep.
it works on people. I think the fight's over if you can't see and you can't breathe.
Especially Tiger Light, one of our great sponsors.
Yes.
Really good.
One of our good sponsors.
All right, so the point of that story is absolutely true. In most cases, if these guys are confronted physically, or sometimes just with an authority figure, they give up. And why is that? They're not badasses with a gun shooting kids in a class. If they were badasses, they wouldn't be doing it, right? And the thing that makes up their psyche is that they're basically weak individuals, not strong. That's why they have to take a gun and shoot people. So what can you do in the fight scenario? A couple things. One, there's the swarm. We've taught that in some classes, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you're behind a door and you're barricaded, and the guy's coming through, and he's just, he's not going to stop, and you're out of the line of fire. And in the class I went to in San Diego, what we did is we barricaded the door, then we opened it up and let it open real fast, and he fell in with his own weight, and we jumped on him and beat the crap out of him. Because if you have 5 or 6 people doing that, you can't really move.
Well, it sort of falls into what I've always thought about, what I've thought for a long time there about, a terrorist attack on a plane.
Oh yeah.
It's not going to happen again.
It's not going to happen
because
again.
every single passenger is going to get up and fight.
Well, in one of the classes I teach, we picked the 4
now
small...
that's somewhere where I would get up and fight.
Oh yeah,
because I've got nowhere to go.
That's right. One of the classes I taught once, I took the 4 smallest people in the class, 5 of them actually, and I had a simulated gun, and I said, okay, that's it. You got nothing else to do. What are you going to do? So each one grabbed a limb, leg, arm, and I could move.
Yeah,
I'm a pretty tall, strong guy, right?
Yeah.
And it really immobilized.
Well, you was strong,
well, not
tall.
so much. I'm feeble, right? So these kind of things sound scary, right? Because I have to go up to the guy. This is the last chance scenario. You don't have any other option except you got to fight. But don't just lay there and say, well, I guess he's gonna bust a cap in my ass today. That's it. It's all over. You got to do something about it. And a lot of times you'll find, from we read on the stories, that the people just say, okay, I give up, everybody. Now I'm famous and I'll be alive and famous, or they'll just kill themselves, right? So I think that part's important. Steve, give me some more ideas about the fight component. That's not necessarily physically engaging, but throwing things at the guy. When you throw something across his line of sight, it changes his target acquisition. His mind naturally tracks that object that's moving. That's how guys' brains are wired, to track the dinosaur in the field, to hunt him down. So they're going to be distracted and say, wait a minute, what's that bling squirrel thing over there,
The one thing I've seen that you guys have seen in the run, hide, fight video is the use of the fire extinguisher. I believe that's an effective weapon as well.
Yeah.
Not only can you bash them with it, but if you spray them, that changes the dynamics. It's like a foamy pepper spray. I mean, it really works.
Even discharging that in the hallways is clouding the area, so you can't see as much.
Yeah. Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
actually.
I mean, just
that is a good idea.
let's say he's going to get in the classroom and that thing goes off.
Yeah.
Now, who's where's the target?
Yeah.
Right? So again, only worst case scenario that you have to do that, but I think it's effective. So, I mean, I've been shot at. I'm still here. Steve, you ever been shot at?
I have not, fortunately.
It's a weird feeling.
Not to be repeated.
No, you feel good about it after you've survived, but it goes back to training. So I would encourage people in their businesses and schools to ask for this sort of training. Now, I have a proposition for you. Are you ready for this?
Yes, go on.
I believe that people don't do this because of what Steve just said. It's going. What was it, Steve? It's going to disrupt the business, right?
Yes.
I don't think it's cost driven. It's not that expensive. I mean, it can be if you have a whole bunch of people. It could be, a bunch of money. But I would be willing, and I don't know if you would go along with this because you're such a busy executive nowadays with your security stuff, but I would be willing to have somebody send me an email and give me a pitch why your place should have training. I'm going to come out there and do the training for free, right? You got to pay for my nice hotel, my car, the food, whatever. But I'll come out and do the training for a day, and I'm going to bet right now that I don't get one email. And I got we got 4,000 listeners. We know that, right?
Yeah.
So probably more.
Yeah.
I bet you I'm not going to get one.
But I'm going back to what you talked about earlier on. I don't think people want to admit that that there's a possibility of it going on.
I agree with you. That's why I think we're
That's
not
the
going to get a
issue.
call. It's not
Yeah.
money.
No, it's nothing to do with
If
money.
I give it
Yeah.
away, you're still not taking the
Yeah.
training. Why is it?
Yeah.
And I think, Steve, that's a problem. What say you about that?
Well, one of my clients is a water district, and they just had it in their facility. I was quite proud of them. I witnessed the process, and they were very creative about where they hid, and they were very creative about how they barricaded the door. Some of them got in their trucks and drove away. I just thought they did an excellent job. So, slowly but surely, and I think more of these cases drive these organizations to have this conversation about the drill.
We had that. I think it's mandatory training for all incoming freshmen at San Diego State University.
Yeah.
That's significant.
See, I think you get back to the water district and groups like that. They're a little bit different from private industry. Although the water district
Right.
is, I think they're organised a little bit different, and the CEOs and the executives, they've got a different thought pattern than private industry, i.e. the entertainment industry. I mean, they have earthquake drills all the time, but very few have active shooter.
I don't get the
drills.
school part.
Yeah.
I don't get why the schools aren't at the front of the line
Yeah.
for this kind of stuff. More and more are doing it. More and more university levels are doing it,
Yeah.
right? Because they can't really get away from that. But they're really only doing it because they're motivated by
Yeah.
avoiding litigation.
Or they're trying to do it very quietly.
They don't want to get sued, and they want to do
Yeah,
it quietly,
yeah.
right? Because now I think it's, Steve, do you think it's at the place where this is the standard? It's not quite the standard, but it's really going to be the standard of care. And if you don't do the training, you're going to be in trouble. We're getting there, right?
I agree, and also I think we're at a tipping point coming up here. We see more of these incidents happen in schools and other places that just keep happening, on almost near weekly basis. I mean, between the Santa Barbara case to this guy up in Seattle till the Vegas thing, it's almost every week. But there's going to have to be more of a response.
Do you think I mean, we were just talking during the break. It just seems to have increased. I mean, I don't know statistically, I don't know if it has or not, but you just get that feeling.
If you're in the
that
news cycle-
this year, it just seems to have
Yeah.
increased.
How long did it take you to get the water district to do it, Steve? Is it a long time?
Well, I mean, 2 years of conversation. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I
2 years.
have to give
Yeah.
them that. And you guys are right. It's really an idea of what's the cultural shift from the executive staff to say this is something we need to do.
Well, we're out of time. It was a good show. We
Be
have to
safe
keep-
in Houston,
we have to do
Steve.
this. Yeah, we have to do this more. But remember, free active shooter training. Give me a call. Send me an
Yeah.
email to chuck@securityguyradio.com. That's chuck@securityguyradio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And we'll do this again. We'll talk more about statistics.
Yeah,
Steve,
yeah.
thanks for calling in. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Good to chat
Keep
with you
safe.
again.
See you next
Cheers,
week
guys.
on Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com.